All right, so Cheryl, we are at the Imagine Retreat Center, and I'm excited to be with you about talking about some of these projects that you're involved with. What is the main project now that you're working on with the family?
Yeah, my heartbeat and passion is really around the family and having that reconnection. I feel like it's sort of a lost art. It's interesting because in 2011 I got this award for the next best brilliant idea for humanity, and um, it's almost funny because the next best brilliant idea is that families should sit down and have a family meeting and really connect. So it's become kind of retro cool, and we have families that are starting to understand the importance of that connection, and that's what this whole initiative is about.
So the project you put together, it's not quite a game, but it's a system, right?
It's a system.
And is it kitchen table talks, or is that a problem?
Yeah, so we've gone to Unstoppable Connections because really it is for the family, but you can have this at any table. What we've developed is a system that embraces four seeds, and those four seeds are good no matter who comes together, but it's really powerful at the family level because when you leave the kitchen table, so we say that it's impacting not only at the kitchen table but beyond. So we have it as Unstoppable Connections because it's going to impact way beyond that moment.
So how do you get people at the kitchen table? I mean, today you've worked on that, right?
Yeah, if I had to pinpoint the number one reason why families are not connecting, it's because life is just chaotic and crazy and they feel overwhelmed by it, right? But if you think about your business, in your business, could you imagine never having a team meeting and pulling everybody together
No,
to make
no.
it successful, right? If you think about a sports team, even at the high school level or even younger, could you imagine them not coming together to have a successful season? So the whole concept is that if you were to ask what's the most important aspect of your life, people would say family, but we don't take a time to carve out that meaningful moment for our own families. Yet if it is the most important thing to most people, it would be at or near the top of their list in terms of their priorities.
So I'm assuming that you have many, many stories that helped you to put this whole thing together. And what comes to mind as far as any stories that are related to your own family that has made this very successful for you?
So our story, sometimes I like to say I was just brilliant and I had this all figured out, but that's not what happened. So what really happened was our very first time of having a family meeting was when I had a meltdown, literally, over my son asking for a tube of chapstick. And of course, we all know it had nothing to do with the chapstick. It was really just spending the whole day trying to figure out finances. We were going through some really challenging times around that, and the chapstick became the defining moment of the straw, right, that broke
Yes.
the camel's back. So that night we sat down and had our first official family meeting, and I really honestly went into it thinking I am going to impart all my wisdom onto my children and straighten them out. And what ended up happening is that I found out that number one, they really wanted to be a part of the solution, and I didn't have to burden them, but everybody needed to step up, and I ultimately maybe learned more from them than they did from me, but that's where we started.
So maybe it's true people don't know how to be good families, and you've got systems that remind us, right?
Yeah, so the four seeds really do bring that way for families to really connect in a way that is authentic, that honors everyone who's sitting in the space together, that makes it safe for people to share, but also makes everyone who is in that space accountable for their piece of the equation. So I do think that sometimes families don't know how to navigate that, and it really is a foundation that allows you to talk about just what's going on in your life. But there are tough topics, and I always am saying, if you can't talk to your kids about the little stuff today, how are you ever going to sit down and have a conversation with them about the big stuff tomorrow? So this is a way to really put some systems in place, and these four seeds that I keep kind of mentioning, but those four seeds are what you can embrace, that whether you're just talking about everyday life or you're really getting into some difficult situations, you sort of have a system in place that helps you to navigate that in a way that is positive, meaningful, and honoring of everyone who's in the process.
So before going on the air, I know that you're very passionate about this, and that we talked about some things that I talk with people that are very motivated and passionate about what they believe in. What are some of the things that emotionally really got you to understand that this was the direction that you had to go to produce this? I mean, what happened? I mean, what really happened?
So honestly, it's one of those things in life where you can look back and see defining moments that I don't know that you realized you were in at the time. But I can tell you the defining moments that did come out of this, and what I realize now is that what happened during that hour that we carved out each week, it wasn't about just that hour. It was about this an entire awareness that it created in our lives. And my boys are now 28 and 25, right? So this awareness that we now have still is part of our, and something that I know will be generational. They will sit down and have a family meeting with their children, right, as a result of it. So, but when I look around at what's going on today, and there's not time to connect, there is a true disconnect that's happening, right? And when I did the Next Best Brain Idea for Humanity, it was done on the premise of that today, while technology will connect us across continents, tonight, can you sit down and connect with your family? And technology's amazing, but it should not be there to replace real connection and real conversations. And technology can still be a part of it. It's just energy. It's what we do with it. But sitting down and really having this meaningful moment with your family is so vital and game changing. Not just in that hour, but literally everything that happens once you leave that meeting.
That's powerful. So I imagine that there were times where in the communication at the kitchen table, the people opened up about things that, not to reveal intimate details, but I'm sure there was a few tears that were shed.
Oh yeah.
Revelations and
Right.
things. How does your project or that brings that out? Sometimes you can't have something happen unless the environment is right. Can you talk about how your project brings that about?
Yeah. So I do think it's and I won't go real in depth on the seeds, but one of the seeds is don't quack the duck, and it sort of sounds fun, and it is fun, but it is, the duck is the idea. So if someone has an idea or something they need to share, they have to feel safe in doing that, right? So we can't immediately dismiss that idea or shoot it down or say that's dumb or whatever, right? We have to at least go through that process so that everyone feels open to share. But the third seed that we always talk about is one called living above the mark. And this is the one that makes you step up and take ownership of it, so that you can't just sit there and say, point a finger at somebody else. Living above the mark is really taking that ownership and responsibility for your choices, and also to be a part of the solution. One of the things that we used to talk about is that you really can't solve a problem when you're in the energy of the problem. You have to solve that by becoming a part of the solution and being in the energy of the solution. And what being above the mark does is it doesn't allow you to stay down here and just pass blame and point fingers. It says, how can I be a part of the solution? And it raises the entire energy, because we're not then giving our power away to someone or something. We're stepping up and saying, this is my life, I'm responsible for it. How do I get to be a part of contributing into the solution? And now we've just raised the entire energy of how we work through something that is challenging.
So it's interesting. You're talking about really how the process works, but you're teaching principles of integrity and living well just by having this around you. So I'm sure there's many, many lessons that are in the process. How did you deal with keeping people's attention, or did being there just bring that about?
When you say keep people's attention.
Well, when your family was talking,
Okay.
and how did you find that you had to keep them engaged, or did the process just draw them in?
So one of the things that I sort of realized was when I started getting out and speaking about this, and I would say to families, just go have a family meeting, I did get the deer in the headlight look, right? Like, how do we do that? And I do realize that I have a creative nature, so when I would get into these meetings, it would go in all kinds of directions, that we would stay engaged with the process, right? My boys actually contributed a lot of the agenda, though, but part of the reason I started to do this was to give families that foundation to get started, and then obviously they can take it and evolve it. But there is a beauty in having that foundation, and I say that because one of the things on it, I'll give you an example. One of the things in the family meeting was to talk about random acts of kindness, right? Which are really positive things to discuss. But we didn't always have one. And sometimes we would sit down and we're like, well, nobody has one. But the next day or a few days later, guess what would happen?
I see.
Because we were thinking about it, right? We didn't always have one in the moment, but I will never forget the day David came running in from school. And he goes, Mom, if we leave right now, we can go do a random act of kindness. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what we're doing, but I'm in, right? Because who wouldn't want to see their kid that excited about that, right? But it's because we talked about it, and what we did was we jumped in the car. We found one of his teammates from football who he heard was walking home in the 95-degree heat because his mom couldn't pick him up. He knew where he lived, so we found him halfway on his journey and took him the rest of the way home. But that Sunday night at our family meeting, then when it came up to random acts of kindness, we both had the same one, right? But the point was this awareness that it started to just kind of weave into our lives, and the agenda was really developed that way. So I think as families do it more, they're going to find it gets easier to do it because you start to realize that the ripple effect that it's having in terms of what you're seeing in the world around you as well.
So I would imagine that this is a great thing for any family in all shapes, sizes, configurations. But are there certain types of family groups or types of individuals that think certain ways that this would be especially helpful for? I mean, I'm thinking maybe church families. Wouldn't really matter what kind of church, right? I mean, how do you feel that would potentially fit for them, and why?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's it's sort of one of those things in reality, right? Who joins the people that join the fitness club, or the health club, are sometimes the ones that are already healthy, right? Because they're in the awareness that that's an important thing. So I think if you look at churches, or if you look at people who do personal growth and development, if you look at homeschooling families, they're already in the awareness of the importance of communication. So I feel like any family who already has that sort of that proactive kind of feeling around this need to have this meaningful connection with your family, they're going to get it, right? So I think probably the ones that need it the most won't gravitate to it because they're not in that awareness yet. I do hope this project starts to bring more people into that awareness as more families, because right now, as you know, when I first launched this, there's families out there now that are doing this. But as I did, it was originally my story, right? But there's a whole lot of stories out there now happening around this. And the more that we can create that awareness, the more that families will see the benefit. Because I think if everybody knew the benefit, if everybody could have the kind of connection that I have with my two boys as a result of what we did, and they understood that was the end result, everybody would be doing it. Mm-hmm. That if it was important to have that kind of communication.
We talked a little earlier that, and I said that probably everybody could use a good counselor. So I mean, everybody could be counseled, but not everybody is in crisis. Mm-mm. And so you said this may not be the place to start if you're in crisis. However, there's still a connection to this. People can learn from it. Mm-hmm. There's principles in this that could take them out of a crisis or prevent them from going into one. Is that right?
I believe I believe this is the best proactive tool that you could use in terms of just sitting down and having this hour that you carve out that's for your family, that you're connecting at this level. That is meant to be proactive. When you're in the middle of a crisis, if you don't already have those tools in place, the wherewithal to have that the system in place already to have that conversation, it's going to be harder to do that. I look around at what's happening, right? Because society's kind of crazy with, and of course the media focuses on it, right? Now we think it's probably even bigger than what it is. But the truth is that, you can look at what happened in some of our schools, and you can look at the drugs that are happening right now, and everybody thinks that and I'm not here to debate guns, and I'm not here to debate violent video games, and I'm not here to debate any of the mental health issues. What I am here to say is that I believe if you really want to solve a problem, you have to get to the core of where it starts. And the family is the connection. And ripples don't flow in, they flow out. If we really want change...
Oh, explain that. That's pretty powerful.
Well, nature demands that ripples flow out. I mean, if you just look, right? So if we want to have an impact, and we can't look out here at our government and think that they're going to solve our problem that's happening in our own homes with our own families. We want to solve what's happening out here. It starts with us. And that was really the whole concept around the Next Best Brain Idea for Humanity, that if we really want to change, the ripples of that change start in our own homes with our own families first. And that's what this is about, is becoming proactive in terms of wanting to make that change.
So this wasn't, for me, really meant to be a commercial, but I feel very strong about this. How do people this is a digital kit now, right? How do
Right.
you, how would people get a copy of this project?
So we did make it digital because it could be more. Somebody could literally start tonight to have a family meeting, right? So if they feel they're just ready to get going, and it's simple. It's nothing complicated about it. It's just really making that commitment. And I always tell people, look, if you are half committed to something, people know it. So as parents, it's not always easy to incorporate this if your kids are a little bit older. If they're young, it's easy, right? Because you can sit them down and say, here's what we're going to do. If they're a little bit older, I have this all the time where they're like, well, I don't know if my kids are going to go for this. It's so important that you understand as parents, this is our responsibility to do this. And if you're half committed, your kids will know it. But if you're 100% committed, 100%, they may not like it, but they will respect it. And it's that commitment. And I can tell you, even Brian, as he got a little bit older, sometimes would roll his eyes. And I'd be like, that's fine. Go roll your eyes. And when you're done, get your butt to the table, because we're still going to have our family meeting, right?
That's good.
So I think that this downloaded kit allows you to get started immediately. And so that's why I went to that. And originally, we just had the physical kit, and we're getting back. We do have the physical kit that will be out there again as well. But right now, in 5 minutes, you can get this downloaded, and you can have a family meeting tonight and start making an impact. And it is way less than the cost of going to a movie. So if you want to change your life for a night and go to a movie as a family for one night, change your life for one night. But if you want to change your life for less than that, get this kit and just get started connecting with your family in a way that will be forever change how you listen, love, learn, and move together as a family.
So, and you've got a website?
I do.
And what is that website?
UnstoppableConnections.com. If someone wanted to go there, it's
all there.
all there, and there's a video there even. It's a short 6-minute video, but it goes through the 4 seeds. You can even just watch the video and share that with your family if that's an easier way to go, or do both. But
Cool.
yeah.
So I got a couple more questions. In our conversation earlier, I shared the video, Dear Younger Me. We had some conversations about that. I know how, if we were to talk to our younger self, what would we say, and how would that relate to your product? I mean, is it something that you're trying to save somebody from their experience, or is it a system that helps people to communicate about what their real important things? And how do you feel about if you were talking to a younger person with the knowledge of your project? What would you say?
Yeah, so Oh Mercy Me, right?
Yes.
I love that song, or I love the group Mercy Me, and thank you for sharing that song, because I think it's powerful, right? What would you say to your younger self? You know, life experiences obviously is the greatest teacher that we have, but being able to go through those life experiences in a way that allows you to share in them as a family, instead of being out here by yourself and feeling like you can't come in and share that experience. That's where I think, if I were going to go, because I can look back at my childhood and say, man, it made me really strong, right? But there are some people who came into my life that helped me to navigate through that. And I would just say that it would have been nice if some of that strength that I got from someone out here, who, thank goodness, was there, what if they had been the people that I was gathering with at the kitchen table, once a week? It would have made a big difference in terms of how I could have proceeded through some of the journey that I had at an early age. On the other hand, I feel very blessed for everything that I got, because I think it's probably been part of the passion that has driven this project. But yeah, for me, I would say, wow, I'd like to go back and have that conversation of understanding that there are a lot of people out there. I would have said, go reach out more to people because most people want to help, and I would have said, ask for more help.
It's interesting sometimes with interviews, it's not about convincing somebody, but I clearly see your passion about this. And what would be your goal for this? I mean, could you, if this system was in everybody's home and they used it, and it really did affect the family, I mean, what does that do to your heart? What do you feel about that?
Yeah, so there's this, and I won't do this complete justice, but there's this quote about, this guy who thought he could change the world, and then he realized he couldn't change the world, so he decided he was going to change his community, and then he realized he couldn't change his community, so he decided he was just going to change his neighborhood, and then he couldn't do that, so he realized he could just change his family, and then ultimately he realized that he could, really only change himself, but by changing himself, he could change his family, his neighborhood, his community, and ultimately the world. And for me, that's always been that, we have so much power that happens right in the core of the family unit. And if we really understood that power and embraced it, we literally could see a change that ripples out and changes our schools and our communities, our nation, and ultimately our world. I believe that's possible. I believe that takes time. I believe it takes commitment. But I believe that every family has that opportunity.
You're almost tearing up. You believe in this stuff, don't you? I appreciate the time that you've given me for this interview, and I know your project will be completely light years more successful as it is, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure, and as always, I love your energy.